Колеги,
We continue our working day. The topic of the next press briefing is tactical medicine in the National Guard of Ukraine as a combat training element. Colonel Viktoriya Shaporenko, NGU Medical Support Office. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. Today I would like to present the tactical medicine in the National Guard as the element of combat training. What is tactical medicine? That is what has appeared with the beginning of military actions in the east of the country. The tactical medicine, like it was in the National Guard and the other agencies, was existed in the form of theoretical classes. As a rule, the class would have about 30 persons, and that would not produce the effect which is needed for the serviceman to be able to rescue his own life. Tactical medicine are methods which every serviceman should have in order to be able to quickly give medical assistance to himself and his comrade. We are teaching the servicemen how to render assistance to each other. What is tactical medicine, and how is that? What is that associated with? This is the element of military training, combat training. Having analyzed the tactical medicine, we came to the following conclusion. In fact, the classes which were planned in the past were of more declarative nature, and they were not designed to teach every serviceman how to render medical assistance. The system of teaching medical tactical medicine was very obsolete. The approaches to the methods of providing medical assistance have changed, and the system that existed required changes. A number of hours for the classes did not satisfy the needs, so the servicemen could not get any practical skills in order to be able to render assistance to himself in some military combat or any accident, any stress situation in accordance with the law on National Guard. The serviceman participates in many tasks, including the protection of constitutional order, participation in military combat actions. That all leads to stresses, first of all, and the serviceman has to be able to know the algorithm of actions which will help save life. Tactical medicine differs from civil medicine by the following approaches. Rendering medical assistance is taking place according to match system. The first rule is stop the bleeding, massive bleeding. from the veins basically can lead to the death of a person within 2 hours. The first rule is to be able to render assistance when person is bleeding. The death rate from bleeding, caused by bleeding, is 10%. That is a big percentage, and the ability in stress situations to render assistance to yourself or your comrade leads to rescuing somebody's life. The second rule of tactical medicine is making the respiratory, the airways unblocked. The airways should be unblocked. If the person lost conscience and the reason why the airways are blocked could be that some object is in there, or because of the tongue. So basically the body is to be stabilized. The next principle is circulation, restoring the circulation, blood circulation, and the last principle is hypothermia, that is combating, fighting, cooling. Now such the different things like thermal blanket are used. The tactical medicine, when all these rules and methods are implemented, that is done in the red zone, in the zone of tactical evacuation, as well all the actions. Which were introduced by the volunteers. We work with such NGOs as Ukrainian Service of Rescue, Medsambat, and Protection of Patriots. We were training these skills, providing assistance in the zone of shelling. In this zone, a serviceman can quickly render assistance when there is a massive bleeding. There should be, as to the equipment, this year the document was approved that declares what should be in a medical kit for servicemen of the National Guard. This medical kit should have different bandage, the gloves and other things. In the zone of shelling, what we can do is to put bind or strap. The second one is to quickly evacuate the wounded person in the zone of coverage, and that is the zone which can quickly become the red zone. That is where we take the wounded person, even if it is just behind some wall. That is considered to be a coverage, a shelter zone. Here we have more time to provide assistance to the servicemen. We also evaluate whether the airways are free. Then if this is a wound of then we should remember that there might be a pneumothorax, and our task is to quickly assess the condition of a person We see the how the sick person looks. We need to teach the servicemen so that they are not lost in this situation, so that they can um, we use also the individual bandage package. It is very important. There is the special coverage which is used to stop the excess of air into the chest, and then there is the soft part, the bandage itself, but in the medical kits which we received during international exercises, during the exercise which volunteers were organizing, we have so-called films which during the wound of a chest they very quickly that they could be quickly applied. They are easy to apply, and we also have these films and we use them. And that is what have already justified themselves as some modern means after rendering assistance in so-called coverage zone. The serviceman is to be evacuated. During the evacuation in the National Guard is done by sanitary transportation or by armored medical vehicles. As a rule, the mobile medical team is working. There might be a medical team which will render assistance to the wounded person. The infusion is connected, and they are monitoring such indicators as the pulse, the pressure, blood pressure. We're warming the person, and that could lead, because the hypothermia could lead to death, and we are trying to do that quickly and evacuate the sick person. Another important issue is sorting the suffered, the wounded people. When there is when there are massive sanitary losses, this issue is becoming very important. First of all, we teach they have medical people. There should be a senior medical chief who would assign to each person what he or she should be doing, so that it's not like when they were trying to. The doctor has a different task besides giving emergency assistance. We cannot do anything more. And the doctors are to be involved at the next stage of evacuation. Out of medical personnel, among the medical personnel, there should be a specialist who knows how to sort out if there are many wounded. This person shouldn't be at a loss. He should be able to distribute these flows of wounded who are seriously wounded. And secondly, what type of assistance should be provided to this serviceman? Whether there should be some bandage applied and the person could be evacuated in the third turn. Because sanitary vehicle cannot take all the wounded. Also, such person should regulate the flow of wounded, but also should be able to differentiate which assistance every person requires. And thirdly, such person should be able to attract additional forces so that assistance is rendered in proper time, because we know there is a rule of the golden hour during which a sick person should get to a doctor. So we are trying to follow these rules. What has changed? First of all these practical skills are trained, not just in every unit individually, but during the exercises. We had exercises where training medical personnel, all these different methods. The organizational structure of the medical service of the National Guard has changed. The positions which in the past were liquidated, like sanitary instructors and doctors, so that we can see the vertical structure of the medical service, so that medical sorting and evacuation could be organized properly. When protecting the public order, there was an exercise, for example, during the protection of the public order, the grenade exploded and 15 persons were wounded. The nurses or medical aides were taking the wounded people to a safer zone, and sanitary instructors, medical instructors, could provide medical assistance. There was a person who was sorting out the person who was assigning the roles. There was no panic in their actions. Every one of them knew what to do. Like one was putting a tourniquet, another one was putting a bandage on the head, the third one was putting a bandage on the leg. We are trying to develop this scenario where servicemen would not just be able to practically train the skills of putting the tourniquet, or putting bandages, applying bandages. But the scenario when if there is some accident, so that these medical personnel, what should they be doing in a medical group? The commander should also know these things. He cannot give instructions as to rendering assistance. No, he gives such an instruction, but the commander has some combat task, and the sanitary law says that to be assessed by the medical worker, and he has to advise to the commander what to do in this situation. There were situations when, unfortunately, the combat task was more important, and it would be better to keep the wounded person stable. This way the wounded person would survive. Our main task is to teach the servicemen how to survive in stress situations. Thank you. Now the questions and answers. And the first question, please introduce yourself. Man-Inform Agency. Is what about providing assistance to the citizens of Ukraine who are at the meeting? Do they have to give assistance not just to their comrades, but to the citizens who are in the streets, in the square? Thank you for your question. Of course, the serviceman, first of all, has to know how to provide assistance not just to servicemen, but to regular citizens. For example, on the 31st of August, there were such events, tragic events, and the medical assistance was provided to everyone. During any situation, all the medical workers provide assistance to all those who suffer. Talking about the 31st of August this year, what is the situation with these two wounded servicemen? Are they still being treated? And when they were wounded, were they providing medical assistance to themselves, or was it done by their comrades? Out of those wounded, there were 4 persons who were wounded. Unfortunately, they died. 21 servicemen is being treated. Out of them, there are about 8 servicemen who are still in hospitals. During these clashes, the servicemen had the stress, because just looking at a comrade who's bleeding, who's shouting, makes another person is a big stress for his comrades. So we invite all people who are willing to help us create such scenarios, because for these scenarios we need the material base.
І дозвольте останнє питання, якщо можна.
And the last question. Do you cooperate with volunteers who focus on tactical medicine with захист патріотів? We cooperate with Uliana Suprun. We discuss all the issues. We have the memorandum on cooperation, and now we managed to increase number of hours, and we managed to change the program. Thank you. See you again. Our next briefing is in a few minutes. Can you listen?